Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new B1 Level podcast. Today, we begin a long story about unexpected opportunities, personal growth, and how life sometimes changes in ways we do not plan. This is a story about a young woman named Emily, who lives in a mid-sized town and discovers a new path that challenges her comfort zone, teaches her resilience, and helps her understand the value of courage. Emily was 22 years old. She had recently graduated from college with a degree in communications and had been working at a small local office. Her life was predictable. Wake up, go to work, complete tasks, come home, watch television, and repeat the same routine every day. She was comfortable, but deep inside, she felt a quiet restlessness, a sense that there was more to life than her small, predictable world. One morning, Emily received an email that seemed ordinary at first. It was from a professional organization offering an international internship in a city she had never visited. The internship promised experience, networking opportunities, and a chance to learn skills she could never gain in her current position. The application deadline was tight, and the requirements were strict. At first, Emily hesitated. Traveling alone to a new city, adapting to an unfamiliar culture, and facing professional challenges felt intimidating. Her mind raced with questions. Am I ready? Will I manage? What if I fail? She nearly deleted the emails several times. But something inside her, the quiet restlessness, the desire for change, urged her to apply. She spent the next few days preparing her application, writing her motivations, updating her CV, and reflecting deeply on why she wanted this opportunity. She realized that growth comes from challenging oneself, not remaining in comfort. A week later, Emily received the acceptance email. She had been chosen for the internship. Her excitement mixed with fear. She felt proud, anxious, and curious all at once. She knew her life was about to change significantly, but she didn't fully understand what awaited her. Emily spent the following days preparing for the move. She researched the city, learned about public transportation, housing options, and local customs. She packed carefully, making sure to bring essential items, but also allowing space for new experiences. She kept a journal to record her thoughts, plans, and reflections. Writing helped her clarify her fears, hopes, and expectations. The journey itself was an adventure. Emily took a long flight, passed through unfamiliar airports, and finally arrived in the new city. Everything was overwhelming. The streets were crowded, the sounds were louder, the pace was faster than anything she had known. She felt small and uncertain, but at the same time, she was exhilarated. She reminded herself, discomfort is often the first step toward growth. Her first day at the internship was challenging. She had to meet new colleagues, learn new systems, and adapt to a faster work pace. She made mistakes, felt awkward, and sometimes questioned her ability. But slowly, day by day, she began to adjust. She observed her environment, asked questions, and learned from her experiences. She discovered that mistakes were not failures. They were opportunities to learn and improve. Emily also started exploring the city in her free time. She walked through parks, visited museums, and tried local foods. She began to notice small details, the way people greeted each other, the sounds of the streets at different times, and the hidden corners that tourists rarely saw. Each observation added to her understanding of the city and herself. One evening, while sitting in a small cafe, Emily reflected on her journey so far. She wrote in her journal, "Life changes quickly when we accept challenges. Fear and uncertainty are natural, but they do not define me. Every step I take, every conversation I have, every mistake I make is part of growth. I am learning to trust myself, to observe, to adapt, and to move forward even when I do not have all the answers." By the end of her first week, Emily felt a sense of accomplishment. She was tired, but she also felt stronger, more aware, and more confident. She realized that life's unexpected opportunities often appear disguised as challenges, and courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to continue despite it. Her adventure had just begun, and she knew that the next weeks would bring new experiences, new lessons, and new reflections. But Emily was ready. She was ready to embrace uncertainty, to observe carefully, to reflect deeply, and to grow in ways she could never have imagined in her small, predictable town. The next morning, Emily woke up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had already begun to adapt to the new city, but she knew that each day would bring challenges she could not fully anticipate. She drank her morning coffee, looked out the window at the bustling streets below, and made a mental plan for the day. Her first task was to attend a workshop organized by her internship program. The workshop focused on teamwork, communication, and problem-solving in a professional setting. Emily entered the room and saw colleagues from different countries, each with unique backgrounds and experiences. She felt slightly intimidated. Some were older, more experienced and confident, but she reminded herself that everyone had started somewhere. The workshop began with a simple exercise, introducing oneself and sharing a personal story. Emily spoke about her hometown, her education, and her motivation for joining the internship. Listening to the stories of others, she realized how diverse and inspiring human experiences can be. One colleague had moved across continents to pursue a dream. Another had overcome significant obstacles in life. Their courage and resilience inspired Emily, making her reflect on her own journey and the growth she had already achieved. After introductions, the workshop shifted to group activities. Emily was placed in a team tasked with developing a small project under tight time constraints. At first, the team struggled to communicate effectively. Ideas overlapped, misunderstandings occurred, and tension briefly arose. Emily felt the familiar fear of failure, but she remembered a lesson she had learned during her first week. Patience, observation, and reflection are crucial. She took a deep breath and listened carefully. Instead of insisting on her ideas, she asked questions, clarified points, and encouraged others to share their thoughts. Slowly, the team began to function as a unit. Each member contributed their strengths, and together, they developed a creative solution. Emily realized that leadership does not always mean giving orders. It often means listening, supporting, and guiding subtly. The afternoon was spent on a city exploration activity organized by the internship. Emily and a small group of interns were tasked with visiting several locations, taking notes, and presenting observations about cultural, social, and economic aspects of the city. Walking through crowded streets, narrow alleys, and local markets, Emily noticed details she had previously overlooked. The way shopkeepers greeted customers, the subtle differences in architecture, and the interactions between neighbors. During a short break in a small park, Emily reflected on her experiences. She realized that growth was happening not only through structured activities, but also through observation, mindfulness, and interaction with the environment. She wrote in her notebook, "Each street, each conversation, each observation teaches me something new. Learning is not only about knowledge, but also about awareness, empathy, and understanding. I am becoming more patient, more attentive, and more resilient." Later that evening, Emily returned to her apartment, tired but energized by the day's experiences. She prepared a simple dinner, then spent time organizing her notes, reflecting on the lessons she had learned, and planning goals for the coming days. She understood that transformation was a gradual process. It was built on daily efforts, reflection, and the willingness to face uncertainty. Before going to sleep, Emily wrote a final thought in her journal.
Today was challenging and rewarding. I faced uncertainty, adapted to new situations, and learned from both successes and mistakes. Growth is slow, sometimes invisible, but each small step counts. Tomorrow, I will continue exploring, learning, and challenging myself. I am ready for the journey ahead. Emily drifted to sleep with a sense of purpose. She knew the coming weeks would test her patience, resilience, and courage, but she also knew that each challenge would contribute to her personal and professional growth. The city had become a teacher, and she was a student willing to learn from every street, every person, and every moment.
The following morning, Emily woke up with a mix of anticipation and determination. She had been learning not just about her internship tasks, but also about herself, how she reacted under pressure, how she handled uncertainty, and how she connected with new people. Today, she decided to focus on pushing herself further, seeking experiences that would expand her skills and confidence. Her first appointment was a meeting with her supervisor, Miss Alvarez, who was known for her strict standards, but also for her ability to mentor young professionals. Emily was nervous. She wanted to make a good impression, but she also wanted to be honest about the challenges she was facing. "Good morning, Emily," Miss Alvarez said warmly. "How are you finding your first week in the program?" Emily took a deep breath. "It's exciting and challenging. I'm learning a lot, but sometimes I feel overwhelmed." Miss Alvarez nodded. "That is normal. Growth always comes with a certain level of discomfort. What matters is how you respond to it. Remember, the most important skill you can develop is resilience, learning to continue even when things are difficult." Emily felt encouraged. She realized that asking for guidance and acknowledging her feelings was not a weakness, but a strength. The meeting ended with Miss Alvarez giving Emily a special task to organize a small event for the interns to share their own personal stories with the local community. It was a challenge she had never faced before, and the thought of taking responsibility for a public event both excited and terrified her. For the rest of the morning, Emily researched ideas for the event, taking notes on planning, logistics, and storytelling techniques. She reached out to colleagues, sent emails to the community center, and began drafting a schedule. She realized that organization, communication, and attention to detail were skills she could practice and improve, and that failure in planning could also teach valuable lessons. In the afternoon, she visited the local library to gather materials for the event. While browsing, she encountered a young man named Daniel, who was also preparing for a community project. They struck up a conversation, sharing ideas and experiences. Emily learned that collaboration was another key element of personal growth. Sharing perspectives often sparks creativity and strengthens problem-solving skills. After hours of planning and discussions, Emily returned to her apartment exhausted but satisfied. She reflected in her journal. "Every challenge is a lesson. Today I learned about organization, responsibility, and collaboration. I also realized that fear is a natural part of growth. Facing it head-on helps build confidence and resilience. I'm learning not just from successes, but also from the process itself." That evening, Emily took a walk along the river. The city had grown familiar, yet every evening seemed different. She watched the reflections of lights on the water, listened to distant conversations, and felt a sense of calm and focus. She understood that learning was not only about active tasks, but also about observation, reflection, and mindfulness. As she returned home, she prepared for the next day, knowing that the event planning would reach its final stages. She reminded herself that patience, persistence, and courage were essential. The journey was not about perfection, but about consistent effort, adaptability, and embracing every new experience as an opportunity to grow. Before falling asleep, she wrote in her journal one final note. "Today reminded me that growth requires effort,
reflection, and courage. Challenges are not obstacles, they are opportunities. Tomorrow, I will continue to plan, learn, and explore. I am ready to face whatever comes next. Emily closed her journal feeling a sense of purpose and excitement. She knew that the coming days would continue to test her abilities, but she also understood that each experience, no matter how small or difficult, was part of a larger journey, one that was teaching her resilience, empathy, and self-confidence.
The next morning, Emily woke up early, feeling the familiar mix of excitement and nervousness. Today was the day she would begin executing the event she had been planning for nearly a week. She made breakfast, reviewed her notes, and double-checked the schedule to make sure everything was in order. When she arrived at the community center, volunteers were already setting up tables, chairs, and decorations. Emily took a deep breath, reminding herself that preparation and organization were just the first steps. Interaction, adaptability, and communication would be equally important during the event itself. The first part of the event involved welcoming the guests, who included local families, students, and community leaders. Emily greeted everyone with a smile and guided them to their seats. She noticed the diversity in the audience, the mixture of ages, backgrounds, and experiences, and realized that connecting with each individual would be a challenge in itself. Once everyone settled, Emily began the storytelling segment. Interns took turns sharing their personal stories, highlighting challenges they had overcome, lessons they had learned, and dreams they were pursuing. The room was filled with laughter, applause, and moments of silence as people reflected on the narratives. Emily observed carefully, learning how each story could resonate differently with different people, and how empathy and understanding could create a meaningful connection. During the second segment, Emily facilitated a group discussion. Participants were encouraged to share their thoughts on personal growth, resilience, and overcoming challenges. Emily guided the conversation, asking thoughtful questions and ensuring that everyone had a chance to contribute. She felt her confidence growing as she saw people engaging, exchanging ideas, and learning from one another. At one point, a young boy shared a story about trying to learn a new language and struggling with fear of making mistakes. Emily was reminded of her own early days in the city and how she had faced similar fears. She encouraged the boy, sharing her experience and emphasizing that mistakes were part of learning. He smiled, feeling understood, and Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. After the event, Emily stayed behind to help clean up and organize materials. As she worked, she reflected on the lessons of the day. Preparation and planning are important, but flexibility, empathy, and observation are equally vital. She wrote in her journal, "Today taught me that growth is not only personal, but also collective. By listening, supporting, and engaging with others, I have learned more about myself and the world. Leadership is about guiding, not controlling. Empathy is as important as knowledge, and courage is shown by action, not absence of fear." Later in the evening, Emily walked home along the quiet streets of the city. The day had been long and exhausting, but it had been filled with meaningful experiences. She thought about the interns she had worked with, the stories she had heard, and the connections she had helped foster. Each moment had added to her understanding of resilience, communication, and personal growth. She paused by a small fountain, watching the water ripple under the evening lights. She felt a sense of calm and reflection wash over her. She realized that the city, which had seemed intimidating and overwhelming only a few days ago, now felt like a living classroom, a place full of lessons, challenges, and opportunities to grow. Before going to bed, Emily added one final entry in her journal. Today was more than an event.
It was a lesson in courage, empathy, and leadership. I learned that preparation is important, but engagement, adaptability, and listening are what make experiences meaningful. Each story I heard, each interaction I had, is a step forward in my journey. Growth is continuous, and I am ready for the next challenge, knowing that every moment, every connection, and every reflection shapes who I am becoming. Emily closed her journal and took a deep breath, feeling gratitude for the experiences of the day. She knew that the coming days would continue to test her abilities and character, but she also understood that each challenge was an opportunity to grow, learn, and contribute to the world around her.